Hi guys, I just wanted to do an introductory video into the programming language that we're going to be using this term in Year 10. So we're going to use something called Microsoft Visual Basic .NET. So it's an example of an object-oriented programming language. So what that means is it's based around these pre-programmed objects, which you can tell to do the various things, and so they're pre-programmed. You can create and manipulate them to whatever you want to do, and you construct programs for a variety of applications. So I'll show you this in the environment in a little while, but there's a few concepts we have to go over before that. So programs in Visual Basic are based around three key items. So you've got objects. So they're predefined objects available to perform a specific task. Now, thinking back to our database unit, it's going to look reasonably familiar. It's based around all these things called forms. Okay, so we use forms in the database, and so what you can do is you make these objects, and you can assign properties which define the size, shape, and appearance of the objects. You can change it. There's a lot of properties. You can change all sorts of things, and events which can be set for any objects which trigger other things. So if you might remember, buttons, which is an object in this environment, we set to perform queries and reports. So a similar sort of concept here as well. Okay, so if you have done a bit of programming before, and if you had done Year 9, we did a bit of Scratch, and so we're going to approach it in a slightly different way this time. We sort of just went in and just made our programs, but there's a bit more to running programs than just actually making things. So there's a little bit of planning that goes into it as well. So with the steps in designing a program, not just for Visual Basic, for any program, these sort of things should be adhered to. So one, investigating the problem. A lot of these, we're going to go through a series of tutorials. So the problems given to you, and a lot of these steps will actually be done for you, but when it comes time to do your own, you really have to look at these things now. So investigate the problem and designing an algorithm. Now, you may have heard of this word before. An algorithm is just a series of ordered steps that accomplish a task or goal. So you're going to look at things called pseudocode algorithms, which look a little bit like a computer program, but are not actually written in the language that that you'll be using. It's sort of like it's called pseudo. Pseudo means sort of fake, or not quite real. So it's like code, but it's sort of a bit more English based. So producing the solution. So going back to the algorithm, you really have to have that stepped out and written down before you actually launch into the code. Okay, because you need to be able to know what you're trying to code to achieve. Okay, so producing the solution is actually writing the code. Debugging and testing is so making sure that your program works. You have to use a variety of inputs to see what sort of outputs that the program does, and make sure it does what you actually want it to do. Creating documentation, so writing down instructions for users. It could be a variety of ways. You could do it in a word processor, or sometimes even commented in the program itself is a type of documentation. So implementing the solution, so installing it on computers, wherever it's going to be used, and evaluating the solution's performance. So that's reviewing how it's being used, and if it's being used, whether it works. Okay, so getting feedback on what you've done. Okay, so second thing I want to do is just take a look at the environment that you're going to be using. So to find this software, if you search, well, my computer's slightly different, but MS, you can just write Visual Basic. Okay, and this is so it's Visual Basic 2010 Express. It'll be in your applications folder. So if you click on that, you get this splash screen. And this is called the IDE. So if you see this word that says, well, this acronym IDE, it stands for Integrated Development Environment. So this is the IDE for Visual Basic Express. Okay, so there's a bit going on. You might not be used to this. Yep, so this is the, when you start it up, this is what we're looking at. So what we're going to do is, if you want to create a new program, you simply press New Project here. Okay, so if you click on that, you have these templates here. So by far and away, what we're going to be using the most is this Windows Forms application. Okay, so that's a forms-based object-oriented program. So let's click on that and go OK down the bottom. Okay, and it'll eventually load and give you this this environment here. So what it comes up with is a blank form. Okay, so it looks similar. Okay, so it's like a window. Okay, so it's a form. You can make it the size and shape you want. Okay, and yeah, so let's have a look at some of the features of this IDE. So there's all this. This is your toolbox over here. So these are all the objects you can create. Okay, so you've got all these things which we'll explore a bit later. Okay, so the button you'll be familiar with. If you click, you can draw a button on here. Okay, now so this is an object. This is a form. These are both objects. And on the right here, you have your properties menu. Okay, so just move myself out of the way there. So what we're talking about before was objects. So these are your objects here, and these are your properties. So you can change all these different properties: color, shape, size, text. Okay, of these this button here. So I've clicked on this button. So this is all the properties for this button. Okay, if I click on the form, I've also got properties for that form. Okay, so that's objects, properties, and the other thing we talked about was events. Now, if you click on, I think it's double click. Okay, so what will happen here? If you double click on an object, it will enter into this coding sort of environment here. So you've got some code here. I won't go too much into that, but what you can do is assign. We'll go through all this. Goes through in the tutorial. This is just a sort of an intro to what we're doing. Okay, so this is the events. Okay, so you can program these things to trigger events, objects, that sort of thing. Okay, so just wanted to show you as well what happens when you save. Okay, so you can flick back between the form design. So remember we went from design and datasheet view in databases. So this is your form design and this is your form code. Okay, so you've got your objects and properties in this panel here and your code in here. So this is your events. All right, now when you save, okay, save a project, we're going to save all. Okay, so when you press save all, it'll ask you to save your project. Now you should have an appropriate, you should save it. Don't just use the default. Okay, so I'm going to call this test 1, and I have a specific place I want to save it to. So you should all be saving this in your network drive. Oops, I want it in my 10IT folder, programming, VB.NET programs. Okay, I've already done a couple of programs there, but I'm going to call that, I'm just going to select folder, I want it in there. I'm just going to save my test 1. Okay, so I've now got a test 1. If you see up in the corner, it tells you the name of the project. Okay, and I just want to show you, I'm just going to exit out of here and go to that folder I just created and show you some of the files that are in there. Okay, so I'll just go navigate back through where I had my stuff. Okay, and VB.NET programs, and this is my test 1. Okay, so it creates all these folders. Okay, so these are all important things that are needed to make a program. So test 1 got all these objects that it creates. Okay, so these are all things that it needs to run the program. Okay, so we'll go through a bit more of these a bit later. I think just let's see, my project. Can't remember which one was the most important one. There's one that you actually run, but if you run it through this this IDE. So if you go back to where is it? Oh, that's not it. So if to open a project, you go to Open Project, and you find your project. I'll open up another one just to show you what happens. So I think the LCD demo is actually one of the tutorials we're going to do. So if you click on this, okay, so Microsoft's Visual Studio Solution. So that's actually, I think, the actual file that you open. There we go. Yep. So this is an example of one of the tutorials we've done. So I've made a form here. I've got all these objects and buttons, and actually, if I put it in run, if I run this program, it will. So it was a demonstration of an LCD output. Okay, so yeah, that's how it sort of works. So look, we'll get into the nitty gritty and do some of the programs in the tutorial book, and that's a good way of getting to know this a bit better. Okay, so that'll do for now.